Kum Learning Ablat Gemara. Today we are learning Daf Dalid, Daf Gimel Amid Aleph. We are up to the two dots. The Gemara the next few days. In fact, the first part of Kiddushin, we have a number of dafim where the Gemara just goes into psukim, are very pedantic to try to learn out certain dinim. So we are up to Daf Gimel Amid Aleph because we start off in the Mishnah saying that a woman can be nikna in three different ways: either using money as a vehicle, or use like an ordinary transaction or acquisition, or shtar, a document, or bia. So Gemara is asking now, first of all, the Mishnah says there are three ways to be koine woman. We can see it's quite obvious. What does it count? Three. Or about 6 lines from the bottom of the page, Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. So Gemara asks, there's 3 ways. We can see that 3 ways. It says kesher shtar bia. And Minyana the Sevelman says that she's koiner herself back in 2 ways. What do you have to nominate 2? We can see. Obviously, it's coming to exclude something. It's Minyana the Reishel Muti Chuppah. It's coming to exclude the Chuppah. That a Chuppah cannot commence, cannot initiate the engagement, the betrothal. Because Chuppah can conclude, but not to begin. Well, Rav Huna, the Omar, Chuppah, koiner, Rav Huna says that Chuppah is koiner. Mikal v'chaymer l'mutimai. Rav Huna that says that a chuppah is koine from a kal v'chaymer. What is that coming to? No, we'll learn later. Hey, Rav Huna says that the chuppah has the capacity also to begin the betrothal, and we'll see later what is going on and what do you mean by chuppah and so on. The different opinion of chuppah itself is, as we'll see, the 3 different opinions. Lemute chalipin, coming to exclude is another common kinyan, which is the most common. That is chalipin, like we learned by Rus. The zois lefonim by Yisrael. This was the meaning by Yidden to tell you that by Kiddushin you cannot use chalipin. What do you mean? Sal kedat chamin. I would have thought. Where do we learn out the whole idea? I would have thought. Where do we learn out from Ephraim? I would have thought that just since we're learning to a field, let's equate it to all the dinim of a field. And how are you kind of a field? Also with chalipin. So maybe you can be kind of a woman through chalipin. Kamash that no, that you cannot use chalipin. Now the question is why not taka? Why not? Chalipin isnahu bepachad meshava pruta. Chalipin can be less than a pruta. The isha bepachad pruta lemekanya nafsher. Because the kinyan of chalipin can be less than a pruta. So Rashi learns, the Gemara is saying here that the whole kinyan doesn't have any dignity, and it's a very undignified kinyan for a woman. It's a gnai for her to be involved in such a condition. So Rashi seems to be learning it all has to do with a subjective feeling. So Taisa already asked, what happens if she agrees to accept it, and so on and so forth. So Taisa has a whole different shot in the Gemara. He takes off the words mekanya nafsha and just says pachad meshal pruta. It means like this. That the Gemara's question here was not just stop compare it to a field. Because if the question is compared to a field, then why don't we ask maybe it can be koine a woman with a kinya chazaka, fix her hair or something else, some kind of a chazaka. Why don't we ask that? So therefore, Taisa wants to say the Gemara's question isn't chalipin and kesef really the same thing? It's the same kind of kinyan. What's chalipin? In exchange of this value, I'm going to get something else of value. So when you say kesef, doesn't that automatically incorporate chalipin? And the Gemara says no. Because chalipin can work with less than a pruta and kesef can't, that demonstrates to us it's taka 2 different kinyonim. It's 2 totally different kinyonim. The Taisus Harid over here and Shulti Gemara and others argue with Taisus. They hold that chalipin would work if it's more than a pruta. You give a woman chalipin, then it won't work as chalipin, but it will work as kesef because it has a value of a pruta. Okay. Then Taisus has a whole interesting discussion. Is since Avraham Avinu was learning from Ephraim, and Ephraim was a goy, and we know that chalipin doesn't work by a goy. So Taisus wants to bring an eye from here that chalipin works by a goy, and then many Rishonim hold that a kinya chalipin does not work by a goy because we'll have another in that the machlei beich and shlakish whether by a goy it's meshicha, kesef, but nobody mentions chalipin. So Taisus, what Rabbein Tam wants to say, the chalipin, everyone agrees. That's why they don't mention it. They're only arguing that one works for the Eden and one works for goyim. And the obvious question everybody asks Rabbein Tam, which people have a hard time understanding, is in the Rus, that this kinyan chalipin, that this kinyan chalipin is only by Yidden, by Yisrael. How the Rabbein Tam learn that applies to goyim as well. Anyway, continue the Gemara. Sefer L'Mutamai, so this. 100%. Actually, we're going to learn the Gemara later, but Shammai says it has to be dinner because a woman feels undignified. So then the Gemara will ask, Ban Seder Rabbiyanai, a very wealthy family, for them a dinner is undignified. So where do you draw the line? We'll see in the Gemara later. Says the Gemara, the Seif Lumute, Chalitza, what's the number by buying, acquiring herself? Is Chalitza. Chalitza is a method that a Yavama severs a tie with a Yavam. We do Chalitza, remove the shoe, and so on and so forth. So Salkim, I would have thought, I would have thought it'd be affected by every woman. If a Yavama will give a get, we learned before that the Rabbanon says the bayis, so therefore he can no longer marry, he has to give a Chalitza. It means nothing. Yet chalitza effective. So get a woman seems to be that's easier to break out of her connection. And a yavam, it might be stronger than an ordinary woman because a yavam the Torah binds the two together. By a normal condition, you meet another person, you decide get married. A yavam the Torah says the brother dies, you have to marry her. So therefore, maybe it's harder to release. And yet the chalitza works. So surely it should work by an ordinary woman. Kamashalon that the Mishnah says it doesn't. Maybe it does. Or Makros and the pasuk Sefer Krisus. You should write her a Sefer Krisus, and we dash him like Rabbi said later. Sefer Kursiv and Davacha Kursiv. The only thing that can sever the ties is a get, and not through a means of a chalitza. Okay, now the next few pages, the Gemara is going to talk about each one of them. How do we know? We're going to bring psukim, and we're going to deal with each pasuk. So let's start with kesef. Minon, how do you know? Now, the obvious question, how do you know? We just learned in the Gimel, the Beis Hamikdash right after the Mishnah. We learned kicha with the Ephraim. So Rashi says you have it sometimes where this is the main Gemara. There the Gemara just brought it to get to the point why it says Kinyan, but but really this is the main Gemara. But the Rashba says right on this Gemara right here, that from here is a raya that the Gemara is not Gemara. The Gemara actually, the real Gemara starts right here. This is the Gemara starts. Minalon, how do we know? And the previous Gemara was written by the Goyim, Rabbi Yehuda Goyim. We discussed yesterday. Says the Gemara, Bekesef Minalon, how do you know? Number one, the Su, how did number in the Mishnah? That if a young girl gets married, the father gets the money from the Kiddushin. First, he has the right to marry her off. Second of all, he gets the money Kiddushin. Bikudusha, Bekesef Rabbi, Minalon, how do we know that? So how do you know two things? How do you know the Mekanya Bekesef? How do you know, first of all, that the girl can get engaged through money? And second of all, Bekesef Lavu, how do you know it belongs to the father? By a maid, it says in the pasuk that a Jewish maid, the yotza chinam, that she leaves her master and it costs her nothing. If the master doesn't want to marry her and all that, and ain't cost, there's no money involved. Now, obviously, if it's chinam, if it's umzist, if it's for free, then obviously there's no money involved. Isn't that extra? Superfluous. So we dash him. Ain't kesef laden zem. When she leaves this master, there's no money involved. Kesef laden achad. If she leaves a father, how does she leave a father? When she marries somebody else, there is money involved. And who does it end up with? The father. Umani or up. And it goes to the father. Now, how do you see it goes to the father? Maybe there's money involved, but maybe it goes to her. Maybe it goes to her. How do you know it goes to the father? When it says Hachi Hashta, it doesn't. How can it be? Avia Mikabel Kedusha. We know that the father is the one who has a right to marry off his daughter. It says as Biti Nosati Liishazeh. I gave this daughter over to this man. That means he has the total right. The Shokla Kaspa. What's the big deal if he doesn't get the benefit from it? He doesn't get the money. Says the Gemara. Wait 1 second. But why don't we say Hani Mili Ktana? When do we say that the pasuk is beating the satilisha? That even though it's talking about a person who's a moiti shemra, and it's talking about a naira, because we're talking about that, if it's true that she gets killed, so obviously she's an adult. But maybe, as Taisa and others trying to say, it's talking about I married her off when she's a tana to this person. Now she's an adult, but I married her off when she was I got her engaged when she was a minor. Maybe by Tana, the Lesla Yad, she does not have the right to get herself married. So therefore, the Kabbalah Kiddushin, the father's the only one who has the right. So therefore, he's entitled to marry her off and get the money. Abel Naira, what comes to Naira, well, once a girl is 12 years old, either the father or herself, she can marry herself off. The Isla Yad, and she has a hand, she has her own independent hand, the Kabbalah Kiddushin to receive Kiddushin. Maybe Taktashi Nafshem Tishel Kaspa. Maybe that if she goes ahead and marries herself off, the money should go to her. How do you know it goes to the father? We have another pasuk when it talks about Nadorim, and that pasuk there it says, "Benureh beisavir." When she's young, she's in the Nurez Naira. Everything she does is in the father's household. He can annul the Nadorim, which means the father still has control over her. Kol shevach neurim lavia. We dash any benefits that the girl has goes to the father. Says the Gemara. That's how we know the Naira goes to the father. So that's a question. You're telling me we learn from the Durham. So let me ask you a question from another Gemara. How you know whatever the activities the daughter does ends up with the father? It says, if a person can sell his daughter as a maid, and which is an extra pasuk. So what's the idea? What do we need a pasuk for? To tell you that the father can sell his daughter to maid, which means that he owns all her handiwork, but now he can even sell it to somebody else. When she's a maid, who ends up benefiting from all her earnings? Her master. So we'll use the pasuk to tell you that all her activities go to the father. Now, the pasuk talking about an Amma has to be under 12 because the day she becomes 12 years old, she's free. How can you learn from there regarding an Ida? So we say, so the Mefarshim explain that no, for a Tana we don't need a pasuk that the father owns activities. If he can sell her off as a maid at that age, surely he owns her completely. If she stays with her father, of course he earns everything. What do I need a pasuk to tell me that her earnings go to the father? But we're talking about someone that we would not have known. So we jump up a step and we say it's a naira. So what do you need that pasuk for? According to you, learn from the Durham. Pay for lane, that you just said that kol shavach nur, everything and all the benefits go to the father. Ella, must be the hafadas the Durham with the that pasuk is referring merely to who has the right to annul her vows, her father, nothing to do with the earnings. So therefore, just like you couldn't learn Maise Bas, it goes to the father. So to Kiddushin you can't learn. Why can't you learn from the Durham? I'll tell you why. The laws of Isa are very different than the laws of money, different framework, and you can't compare the two. Over there, the father has the right to know the Nadarim. Doesn't mean that the father has the right to receive her handiwork. And so too with Kiddushin. Let's learn from the laws of penalty that if somebody rapes a girl or seduces a girl, there's $50 that changes hands and goes to the father. We have a rule. Knas is a chiddush. It's a levy that the Torah placed upon the person. So you can't just say, okay, well there goes this. This is the modus operandi. That's how it'll work over here. Because you cannot compare one knas to another because it's from a chiddush you can't learn. If you're going to ask, there's two other payments. There's 5 payments in total, and 2 others are baishas of begam and shame and the fact that now she's been devalued, and that is already is a reflection of a true damage. It's not just a penalty; it's real. So the and over there it ends up with the father. So let's learn Kiddushin as well from there. For the answer. Shiny boishes pagam and also Maisabas. Shiny boishes pagam is different. He's hurt by it. You know why he gets the money? Because he directly hurt. He could have married off to a mukashchin. He could have married off to the ugliest looking guy in town, and the guy would have paid a lot of money for the marriage, and the money would have gone to the father. And now he lost out. Therefore, he's entitled to it. Which, as the Rishonim will point out, is very difficult to understand. That in itself is our question. Who says that he gets the money from Kiddushin? You tell me that you can't live from there because since the money Kiddushin goes to the father, now you affected him. But that gufa is the question. Who says the money goes to the father? So therefore they try to give a different explanation here. El mistabra, it makes sense. It makes sense that, let's go back to the pasuk v'yatzachin and kasef. We're trying to draw a simile between a girl with a master and a girl who else. The only other person that controls her is her father. And therefore, we're comparing the two. In this case, there's no money going to the master. And in the other case, not that the money goes to her, but that's not really a contrast. The other case, the money goes to the master, to the father. How can you compare the 2 yitzias? In the case of a maid, when she's 12 years old, she leaves her master, let's say, completely. Over here, even if she's engaged, still the father is the one in control until she gets married to this other person. So it's not the same. You tell me you're drawing a contrast, 2 similar cases, not similar cases at all. Tomorrow says, but at least when it comes to the Dorim, he no longer has a unilateral right to annul the Dorim. He still has a right, but he has to do it jointly with as we look more in Dorim, jointly with a husband. So therefore, in that regard, similar to an Adam, that he loses the status that he originally had. The Tanah, we learned, but also that both, when it comes to a girl who's engaged, it's the father together with the husband that can annul her Nadarim. Says the Gemara, You tell me that's what it's coming to teach you. Let me ask you a question. The high you tell me that the yatzachinim ain't cost is coming to teach you this din that one. Then in this case there's no money, but in another case there's money, and that's which is kedushin, and the money goes to the father. We need it for something else altogether. Like at the time, the brisa, which is a cryptic brisa, the Gemara on the bottom page will explain it. But the Tanya says the brisa as follows: the yatzachinim ain't cost. There are two segments in this passage. The yatzachinim is elimei bagus. At the age of 12 and a half, the girl leaves her master. Ain't kesef. There's no money changing hands. Eli may not is not only 12 and a half, but even 12 where she leaves. That's what the pasuk is used for. Nothing to do with where the money ends up. But Avina says no. We can learn both drushes. You know why? Because in Cain, if so, lame makra, it could have just said ain't kesef without a yud, and we would learn out that you may neither she leaves her husband. You don't need a yud there. My ain't kesef. Why you have to have a yud? Ain't kesef l'odin zed. There's no money to this master. But there is money to another master. That's the extra drushes. So you learn two drushes. One from the word "ein kesef." The whole phrase "ein kesef" is irrelevant because it's superfluous. You already have the yatzachinim. But then you ask, there's an extra yud. The extra yud teaches you another halach. And that is, in this case, there's no money. But in another case, when she leaves a master, when she leaves a father, and through Kiddushin, the father's one who can marry her off, and the money ends up with the father. Oh, yeah, of course, many times. Knew of the father. How do you know that you darshan ain't without a yud and yud? The time we learn. But we know that if Bas Kohen marries a Yisrael, if the husband dies and with no children, she reverts back to a Bas Kohen. She can eat truma. What happens if her child died but she has a grandchild? Then she cannot go back to her. How do we know that? It says the pasuk v'zera ein lo that if her husband dies and there were no children. Ainly Elazar, her own children. What about if she doesn't have a child? A child died, but she has a grandchild. Tamalema Zera Ain Law, the Yud Ayin Law. Look further down the track. The Ain Zera Kosher. All we know is if she had a kosher child. Zera Apostle Menayin. How do you know if she had a mamzer? How do you know it applies? And Tesha already says it can't be talking about if she has mamzer because she had a mamzer. Then that means she committed adultery. Then she forfeits. Then and she lives a kohen. She forfeits her rights to eat truma. We go back to her to original case. So it means that the grandchild, that was her son, what it called, while he was married, or a daughter, or married, whatever it is, her daughter from the Yisrael, created a mamzer, a grandchild of mamzer. So it's nothing to do with her personally, the grandmother. Still, how do we know it's considered her child or her grandchild, and therefore she can no longer go back home to Bas Yisrael, to Bas Kohen? So we see that what? The ain is it says ayin. Look further into it. So we dash in the yud. How can you use the same word ayin for a grandson and then for a mamzer? You have to learn two dinner from the same word. The says you don't need a pasuk for a grandchild because the bnei bonim harei kebonim. We have a rule already. A grandchildren have nivamas within a pasuk. The grandchildren are just like children. The grandchildren just like children. So we don't need a pasuk for that. It's key. It's a krog. Is that a pasuk? So and where do you learn it all from? From the yud. So you more of a Tana group how do Tana know you can dash the yud? Every time it says ain is written with the yud, like you just asked. I'll show you. There's a number of places in the Torah where it says ain without a yud. So every time there's a yud, we can dash it from it. It says there that Bilam, they came back to report to Balak that Bilam refuses to come and join them. Me'ain Bilam. Bilam doesn't want to come with them. Or it says that what does the Yavama say to the Yavam when she does the chalitza? It says in the pasuk there, Me'ain Yavam. He doesn't want to marry me. Both of these cases it says Me'ain without a yud. So what kaseh b'ha yud? How come it says the yud? So the same thing over here. The yotzachinim ain kaseh. We can dash in two things. Ain kaseh begeres and ain with a yud. Says the Gemara. Now the Gemara concludes. The itzrach lemichtav kedusha la'aviv, the itzrach lemichtav masi delavis. We have two psukim. One is teaching that the kedushin of the girl ends up with the father, the yotzachinim and kasef, and then we had over here Rav Huna who said that the ma'isa habas goes to the father because it says that a father can sell his daughter to the amma. It's an extra pasuk to tell you that what that he controls her, and that it's obviously not by Ketana because for sure he can sell her. But it's talking about a naira. So what do you need two psukim for? What do you need a pasuk to tell you that all the earnings go to the father? And you need a separate pasuk that kedusha goes to the father. The itzil lemichtav ma'isi delavia. If you only knew the kedusha of the father, I would have thought, you know why? Because she didn't put any effort into it. She's just a girl. So therefore, the money should go to the father. Abba Maisi there. She's out there working and she's earning money. It's not fair that it should go to the father. The kotorchebu that she's working hard. Maybe it's her money. I need a special passing to tell you no. That any money she earns goes to the father. On the other hand, so Iash and Maisi there, just tell us about the earnings. I would say the kamizanim. The fact is, in return, the father gives her shelter and a room of board and so on and so forth, and feeds her. So I would have thought, okay, it's fair if they get swapped. Your earnings go towards the family, and the father takes care of you. Because there's some a fringe benefit that the father doesn't have to give anything in his place, and who says she'll ever get engaged? Some part of the cheshbon. But you don't have it. Maybe she's entitled to the money. Therefore, you need both cases.